Hi guys. I realized that as we are, if the camera moves, I apologize. Lucifer is down here with me, and so is Oliver, so you might see them occasionally. But I realized that we're throwing a lot of names at you, and we're talking about a we're talking about a lot of stuff that happened in the previous campaign that we ran before this one at Lionheart Games. So I decided to put together all the information and kind of break it down for you guys in this video. There's going to be a lot of names. But this will stay posted up on YouTube. So if you ever want to go back and refer to the video of some name that you thought of, and I can make more as we discover more gods or more characters, just to try and help keep everyone on the same page and up to date on information. Um, well, I think we can kind of just start. We'll just start off with the gods. So the gods in James's world, or the world of Arun, are they start with Jimifer McGucket and Imara. So Jimifer McGucket and Imara are the two creators of the world. Jimifer was always good at heart. Imara was always evil. They ended up having 5 kids, and the 5 kids that they had all had bird represented symbols. And I'll go through each one of those. Sumerian, she was the goddess of life, and her symbol was a blue jay. And then there's the Raven Queen, who's pretty typical for D&D. And she's the goddess of death and the afterlife. And of course, her symbol is a raven. Thane, Thane, is the god of nature and wild things, and his is a little thrush or a little like tweet tweet bird. Melkor is the god of war, and he is represented by a a red hawk. And Illith is the goddess of tricks and pranks, who we've kind of already heard a name of in the campaign already, but she's represented by a white owl. Dragon gods are also half the same as normal D&D stuff. Io, he is the father of the gods, the father of dragons, the creators of dragons. And he is obviously he's the oldest dragon in existence, and he had a son named Theliac, who is the creator of what is called the Hidden, which is before the war. Dragonborn was not a race in Arun, and so after the war was created, Dragonborn became a race. People started turning into Dragonborns because of the Hidden. The Hidden were created as people who were also dragons. So essentially, early Dragonborns that were 2-colored dragons instead of a single colored. So you would have like a black and a blue, or a silver and a bronze, So it was a combination of 2 different dragons, 2 different colors, and those were the Hidden. So after the war and after the good guys won, spoiler alert, the the Dragonborn race became a thing. And then Bahamut, which is normal D&D, he's the good dragon god. Tiamat, normal D&D, evil dragon god. Just to review, in case you don't know, she has 5 heads. Black, which shoots acid. Blue, which shoots lightning. Green, which shoots poison. Red shoots fire. And white shoots cold. And so that's the dragon gods kind of summed up in a nutshell, and I can touch on the Hidden in a later video if you would like. One other god here before the war was Asmodeus, the god of the Hells. His whole thing was contracts and order. He had 2 sons named Demarask and Oblick. We'll touch on Demarask a little more because he was part of the cabaret. Oblick was kind of just a background side character that would pop in every once in a while to help. Um, so just some important uh, post-war gods. So three of these were created because of their valiant efforts through the war. They were given these gifts to become these gods and goddesses. The first one is, I'm a little biased, it's Shaba. She was my character in the previous campaign. She was a wood elf shadow monk who was given a brooch, uh, and if she broke the brooch or smashed it, she was able to become the goddess of love and sacrifice, and we'll get into that a little more here. So Shava is the goddess of love and sacrifice. She has a peacock or peacock feathers as her symbol. Malwark Toops, which we will get into later as well, but he was part of the cabaret, and so was Shava. He became the god of craftsmanship. His symbol is I'm sorry, Andy, if I'm pronouncing this wrong. AWL? I don't know. AWL. It's a very uh, common craftsman tool. I can put a picture up so we can see it. And it had some blue thread through the eye of the tool. The third one was Locke. He was a half-orc barbarian, not the smartest. So he became the god of childish delights. His symbol is a teddy bear with holding a fishing pole, because Locke loved to fish. Lucy, come on. Sorry. Locke loved to fish. And then some of the new ones that new for us as players as well, and for you guys, are the Mother of Deceit. Now that's her title. She's the daughter of Thane and Illith, two of the bird gods that originated from Jimifer and Imara. We don't know her name yet. Even I, as a player, don't know her name yet. Lucifer. And so we have that one. We're still learning, but she's all about nature and playing tricks or being deceitful. Don't walk over there, please, buddy. Then the other ones that we recently discovered were the Yuan-Ti original gods. So that's new for us as well. Nobody's played a Yuan-Ti until Justin came in and played Ota. So we're figuring all that stuff out with you guys, but I just wanted to review them. So the first one is Alanet. She's the goddess of love, and as you've probably heard a few times in our conversations, these two are represented by constellations in the world of Arun. And the one, Alanet, she is the maiden constellation, and the other one is the warrior constellation. That one is Milaka. Milaka, I believe is how James pronounced it. And he is the god of judgment. So the maiden and the warrior constellation are usually running to each other, and that's the normal, big old normal constellation. But every once in a while, when something drastic is about to happen, as was said in episode 8, I believe, they change so that, oh shoot, one is chasing the other. I think the maiden is chasing the warrior. It's one of the two. So that's when the Yuan-Tis, at least, and anybody else who studies them knows when something drastic is about to happen in the world. So that is about all of the gods summed up a little bit. There are a bunch of other important figures that I will touch on, but I kind of just wrote a big old summary of the war. So the war was called Mortok, the Immersion War. So that is what the war was named after the war, obviously. But I just wrote a little synopsis here. It's kind of long, but it kind of touches on the cabaret and the main characters, and gives you a little bit more background about what this war was and why it started and the impact it had on the world. So, okay. So our story starts back in the past, so far back that only the goddess of creation herself knows. Amara created 10 Kopeshes that were possessed by some fallen gods who then became demon lords or ladies. We mortals only know about 5 Kopeshes, though. Later, Jimifer noticed that all the evil that Amara was doing, and sealed her away for the good of the world. Then he made himself go insane to protect his children, so that way he wasn't able to release her and also protect his children from her by not having this memory of her. Um, but as every bad guy, we know that Amara had a backup, or she wouldn't give up so easily because she had a backup escape plan. As like I said, every evil villain does. She set the 5 Kopeshes down to a rune to possess 5 powerful beings before she was sealed away, to later break her out and free her from the seal that Jimifer put her in. The act of the 5 demon lords working to break her out started the worst war a rune has ever seen, later titled, as I said, Mortok the Immersion War. 80 years from our friend's new journey. Now, this war would continue to pester the world for 50 years. After about 48 years of the war, uh, it was showing no progress for either side, bad or good. It was just a constant war for 48 years. A group of people started to come together and were tasked with ending the war and stopping Amara from being released. Now, these people were a bunch of, random buffoons that had a little bit of power. But when the group got together, they brought a piece of hope into the world that had suffered for the last 48 years of constant war. Their combined power, after growing and learning together for 2 years, was enough, or so they hoped, to take down the evil beings that had united to destroy the world. This group of randos called themselves, as you've heard, the Cabaret. With knowing the right people, this group was able to have an essentially unlimited amount of money, weapons, and somewhat of a medium army standing behind them. All of these resources were provided by the Briar, and the Briar is a secret organization of criminals and spies and assassins. And they are run by the name. The Briar is run by the person titled the Thorn. The Thorn is the leader of the Briar. Now that brings us to a first member of the Cabaret. His name was Taki, a very charming but stealthy satyr. He Taki was a crazy man that loved to find as many women and men, did not discriminate, to share a bed with for the night. He used to be good friends with Valis, that's our main bad guy, but I'll get to him in a little bit. And is still good friends during the war with Morlock and Peeta. That's the group of them that traveled together, and I'll touch on them in a little bit as well. Our main bad guy, Valis, his brother was Morlock. His twin brother was Morlock, and obviously he did not agree with him turning evil. And Peeta just happens to be, the king of Draconis. Very casual relationship they all had. And him being a satyr was also a purveyor of drugs and alcohol, but it's fine. Another one of Taki's friends was, and a member of the Cabaret as well, was Malowork Toops. Now, I've kind of already touched on him. Yes, he was the one that became the god of craftsmanship. But Malowork Toops is a human sorcerer. Malowork was the brother of one of the other main bad guys, Quinn Toops, who I will also get to later. He was the first person tasked with stopping Amara, getting this task of just wanting to go to a stinking arts and crafts fair, as Malowork himself was a leather worker. He knew his fate after a while was to end up dying by the hands of his brother, while trying to end his brother's life, and that brother being Quinn. And unfortunately, he was not able to stop Quinn. And with the help of Quinn's wife, Criella, again, we'll get to her later, he had died. Traveling along with Malowork, obviously while he was still alive, just so happened to be the son of Asmodeus himself, Demarask, as I touched earlier. Demarask was a very important member of the group to help provide weapons and power for the army, which was slowly making it grow bigger and bigger, and it helped also get the Hell army nice and strong. While Demarask was part of the cabaret, he just so happened to be going through a divorce with a fallen angel, Oriana, who, you guessed it, is a bad guy. We'll get to her later. He was unfortunately killed at the hands of his evil, possessed ex-wife, finally his ex-wife. Continuing on through the members of the cabaret, we meet Hiss. Hiss is a thri-kreen. In case you don't know what that is, he's kind of like a standing bug. And he has 4 arms, 2 legs, and they communicate via like clicking sounds, as normal insects and bugs do. So he was never able to communicate to the group, but always had a chalkboard ready because he was able to write in common, just not speak it. But later, he was given, or he acquired, a magic item that gave him a voice box, so he was able to speak to the group in common. Hiss was an amazing fighter with just 2 arms, but you throw in those 2 extra arms, he's 4 times as deadly, especially when all 4 of them have swords. Hiss got along with the group great. He was always there to protect them. But he did have one problem with the group. Elves are very delicious. Shava, being a wood elf, was always cautious around Hiss, but yet they would always go off together and run around and do little side things together. It's kind of amazing that Hiss didn't eat Shava. She used to be, before she met the cabaret, she used to be an assassin with a cold heart. But the longer that she stayed with the cabaret and the more breadsticks they gave her heart started to warm up and soften. While Shava was figuring out what to do with the brooch that Aelith, the goddess of tricks and pranks, gave to her, she would sit up on her wall in Draconis, and this wall would line the edge of the floating islands, so that way people wouldn't just walk off. And she would sit there on the wall, and on multiple occasions she would just jump because monks have slow fall. And she'd always count on her her party members to get her back up. But she was sitting there contemplating what to do, whether to give up her life to save the world or to be selfish and live out the life that she wanted to live with her fiance Vera, who I will also get to in a minute. And one of her favorite pastimes, as I said, was jumping off cliffs, jumping off of high buildings, and overall just sitting on very high places. Because she counted on Vera a lot to catch her. Vera was a dwarven druid that the cabaret picked up in an underground dungeon jail. Now, Taki, in case you didn't catch it earlier, he's a rogue. And so with his help, they were able to break her out. And after we figured out her intentions were good and she wanted to help the group end this war, she officially became part of the cabaret. Vera learned and grew in her powers and was given a gift from the creator of the dragons, Io, as I said earlier. He gave her a gift that would enhance her already normal badass druid abilities to literally shapeshift into whatever she wanted. And he gave her the power to shapeshift into a huge black and gold dragon. And as I said, the dragon is badass, don't get me wrong, but Shava and Vera always had spent a lot of their time, when not planning or fighting, just kind of flying around and Shava jumping off and Vera catching her, but that's okay. So with all the fun that Shava and Vera had, There was a point in Shava's life where she was being what she considered messed around or played by the gods, because Aleph is the goddess of tricks and pranks. So she likes to kind of twist things and how she uh, says things, and she makes them into big cryptic messages that Shava did not have the patience to sit there and solve. Um, so she was mentally unstable and was going through a very low point in her life. And of course, the higher ups didn't like that, so they ended up putting her on a beach with just sand and water, and nothing else. Nothing to hurt her. She couldn't do anything to hurt herself. It was a completely, you know, harm free zone. But that is where we met Horio. Horio was a giant sumo wrestler, and he um, met Shava on that beach, and he convinced her not to hurt herself, and had to carry her back by force to the group. But they got there nonetheless. Horio, while with the cabaret, he experienced a lot of weird and big and unexplained things that happened, being one of the last people to join the cabaret before the war ended. So he for sure needed, and I'm sure attended therapy sessions. And I told him to always charge it to the Briar because, like I said, unlimited money. Um, and um, so while we were in Draconis, which is, by the way, where most of this took place, um, while we were in Draconis, a portal opened up while we were hanging out in the bar called the Bosom's Buckle. And through this portal fell an old historian man, human man, who was beat up and looked pretty near to death. The cabaret, after determining he wasn't a threat, accepted Valorian, the human monk, into from a parallel plane into the cabaret. Sorry, Lucifer's knocking things over. So after much discussion and plenty of headaches, uh, Valorian was able to explain that he was from a plane where his cabaret, and a, a parallel plane, so it was the same names, but everybody had a different look. There were different races, different colors, everything. And he explained that his cabaret had actually died in the last ditch effort that one of the big bad guys from that plane uh, attempted, and they weren't prepared. And his whole party died, all except for Valorian, which he was able to get a portal open somehow by the gods and jump through to be able to come to our plane to have a second chance on life and a second chance to live with the cabaret. Slightly different, but pretty much everything else was the same. So we've gone over a lot of names here. And I saved this member of the cabaret for last because he's an interesting person. Um, so while we have everyone in the group, I'm just gonna finish it off here with a Kiba cherry on top. Kiba is your local drunk. No, wait, no. Sorry, Free Spirit. Free Spirit, who unintentionally became a time hopper and a planeswalker. He was originally the original owner of the possessed Khopesh that ended up in Valis's hands, and Valis got it honestly just trying to help a friend. Kiba was struggling with hearing voices in his head, and the way that he solved that for the past 30 years of his life was drinking. Because while he was drunk, there were no voices. So Valis, being his friend, wanted to help him out and took the Khopesh. After time hopping for a while, after the Khopesh was taken from him, Kiba ended up in Demarask's bar in Hell, where the cabaret happened to be staying one night. And so that's they convinced him, it took a lot, but the cabaret convinced him that he should come help uh, in the efforts of the war. Now, he was always willing to make plans as long as those plans didn't involve him on the front lines. Um, because, as Kiba always said, there's people for that. He doesn't need to do it himself. What he loved doing most in the world, besides drinking, was searching for artifacts and just artifacts buried around the world and telling people about his famous father. So, that's all the good guys. Now, as I said, we're moving on to the bad guys. Let's start with our most recently named bad guy, Valis. Valis, before getting the Khopesh, as I kind of touched earlier, traveled with his brother Morlock and friends Taki and Peta. They were kind of their own little adventuring group party. And once he took the Khopesh willingly from Kiba, the demon let me see here. The demon Calibron, Lord of Lies, was able to possess his body. And, start his long ago given quest of freeing Amara. The next big baddie that I want to touch on, we've already kind of talked about a little bit, was Demarask's wife, Oriana. Yes, I'm saying that right. Oriana. Oriana is a fallen angel, and when she took possession of the Khopesh, the demon Helma, Lady of Blight, took control of her body to later, as I said, kill Demarask and find her brothers. Now, the third Khopesh ended up with a nobleman by the name of Kavan. It's spelled like Kevin, but it's Kavan. Anyways, he was a nobleman from the city of Nervrata, which we can go on in later videos explaining the cities and everything like that if you guys wish. But he was possessed by the demon of Rugomin, Lord of Waste. But he eventually ended up dying by the hands of the army that was in hell. Oriana ended up dying by the hands of the army in the in-between. And Valis was yet to be known about at the end of the war. As I said earlier, there was 5 Khopeshes that were sent down to Earth. The 4th and the 5th Khopesh were a mystery to the majority of the population of Arun. If they even knew about these Khopeshes. The few people that made it out of the war and traveled close and knit with the cabaret knew that the 4th Khopesh was given to a man named Quinn Toops. Now, if you recognize the name Toops, that's because that's Malwork's family. Malwork's family is the Toops family. And Quinn was one of Malwork's brothers. And he was possessed by a demon that nobody knows the name of. If I think the only person who knows the name would be Amara herself. And Quinn, but yeah. But no one also really knows what happened to Quinn after the war. He kind of just disappeared. So he's yet to remain a mystery. But that 5th Khopesh was a completely different story. That 5th and final Khopesh fell into the hands of a man, elf, named Quillen. When Quillen took possession of the Khopesh, his demon Gormaka, they lived in harmony. The 2 souls lived in harmony in his body, and after spending decades together, they ended up actually falling in love. And even though Quillen was an elf, he eventually died. And Gormaka, in that moment, decided to take full control of Quillen's body and continue to live out his life in Quillen's honor. But Quillen's actual soul was locked up in the in-between. But Quillen, aka Gormaka, at this point in the war, was always willing to help the cabaret out. For a while, the cabaret thought he was dead. But he ended up coming back and surprising everyone, and was always willing to help wherever he could, whether it's just fighting simple battles or giving us information about his brothers and his sister, the other Kopeshes. But after the war, Gormaka was, because of his efforts and his help with the war, he was given the status or promoted to an angel. He became an angel. And Quillen, the actual Quillen soul who was stuck in the in between, got a second chance at life and was put back in his body. Um, in the end, as a classic hero story goes, and as I've said before, the good guys won. So, you know, the good guys won, defeated not one but two Imaras. That's a whole other story we can get into later. And successfully ended the war. They were not able to stop Imara from emerging from her seal, but they did end up killing both the Imaras. Shava ended up giving her life for her love, family, and friends, and the people of Arun by crushing that brooch and essentially killing herself and making herself the goddess of love and sacrifice. Malawark was killed, and after he was killed by his brother, he was given the power of the god of craftsmanship because of everything he did for the war. He was the first person and probably the longest reigning member of the cabaret. So after 50 hard years for the soldiers who fought in the war and the people who lived in Arun, the war was finally over. And a bunch of rebuilding began. This is the point in the story where we fast forward in time to the time of post IW, or Immersion War, year 30, where we pick up with our friends in Draconis getting ready for their trials. If you want me to do more summary videos like this, just let me know in the comments. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. I know I keep saying I'm going to, but eventually I'll post a video on TikTok. Check out our friends at Lionheart Games. They are the amazing people who let us use their store on days to get this group together, and we wouldn't be here without them. And check out their band that they have called If Nothing Else. I don't know if you can see the cup, but If Nothing Else. They are an amazing band that usually if there's not an episode, it's because we're there at one of their concerts. Have a good night, guys. Bye.